All right, folks, welcome back. Russia's Vladimir Putin is raising the stakes in Ukraine, signing what he calls treaties today for an illegal annexation of occupied regions. Ukraine's President Zelensky immediately responding with a fast-track application to join NATO's military alliance. Joining me now is author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, Gordon Chang. Gordon, it's always a pleasure to have you here, sir. Chinese state media is supporting Putin's propaganda, claiming the Ukraine-Russia conflict is at a stalemate, and the international community has no option but to accept Putin's annexation or face nuclear consequences. It's amazing. China is actually backing the deployment of nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, Ukraine is asking for fast-track admittance to NATO. Lots to unpack here, Gordon. Is this the axis of oppression pushing to reveal the weakness of the West, led by left-wingers?
Certainly. Chris, when Biden failed to deter the invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, that started a series of events which have led us here. I wouldn't say inevitably, but clearly. And that is because of Biden's catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan. We know from that the Chinese believed that the U.S. was in terminal decline and was crumbling and was ineffective. And I think that actually encouraged Putin to ignore the warnings from the Washington and from other capitals not to invade. So clearly it's weakness on the part of the West that has led us to this really very dangerous situation.
And you know what? Because of this, because we have few options, because we don't have effective leadership in Washington, this is when I got word of this today, I started gaming this out in my head that there's a couple of options. There's number one, we can have Ukraine join NATO, which of course would cause an escalation, which seems that communist China and Russia wants. And then we're looking at World War III. Or under the Biden regime, you could see NATO crumble and collapse and say, okay, you win. And then that gives China the imprimatur to go around the globe saying, see, the West has fallen. We're the only game in town. Side with us. It's a really terrible position where these Democrats have put us, isn't it?
Yes. Well, we're in an exceedingly dangerous situation where every option going forward is horrible. You talk about a lot of people say, well, Ukraine joining NATO would lead to World War III. And I can understand that. But so does every other option going forward. And at least we got to try something new, because although something new may not work, at least it's not guaranteed to fail. And on the course we are on, we are guaranteed to fail.
Well, if it was President Trump sitting in the Oval Office, he would be gathering some intelligent people around him saying, I want an option C. I don't want an A and B. I want an option C to where we can deter all of this aggression. But I'm afraid the folks that are in charge right now just don't have the imagination. Meantime, Gordon, U.S. Coast Guard confirming a group of Russian and Chinese warships together spotted just a few dozen miles off the Alaskan coast last week. With American weakness on full display, our enemies are growing more emboldened by the day. Isn't that the greatest danger of Democrats' efforts to weaken our military and our defenses, that it invites this aggression from our enemies?
Yes, of course. We Americans, we think that we are entitled to be oblivious and forget the lessons of history. But we have forgotten the lessons of the Cold War. We have forgotten the lessons of the 1930s. And that's why we are in this position as it is. And, I'll just give you one example. When Trump was president, a lot of people didn't like his Russia policies. But the point was that Putin decided that it was not worth taking on the United States and invading Ukraine. Of course, in the administration prior to President Trump's, Putin actually took Crimea. And then, of course, in the administration after Trump's, he then decided to invade the rest of the country. I think that's very clear that one president's policies worked and Obama's and Biden's policies have completely failed.
Yesterday, a fourth leak was found in Russia's Nord Stream gas pipeline that supplies Europe with its energy, as you know. European officials say the leaks are likely a result of sabotage, pointing the finger at Russia. Some say Vladimir Putin cannot be responsible because of all the money he would lose. But is that really the case? China is making billions, as you know, Gordon, off of the United States and using that money to use bombs and bullets to fire at Americans at a future time. But China is also laundering American money and using it to buy Russian energy. Now, we don't know who's responsible for the destruction of that pipeline, but those who say it's impossible, couldn't possibly be the former KGB agent aided by communist China, are they credible in eliminating Putin as a suspect?
No, Putin is the number one suspect because he gains the most from that sabotage. After all, he has been saying himself he didn't want to sell gas to Western Europe. And really, this was a message to Western Europe not to get further involved in Ukraine. The CIA has warned Germany that there was a possible sabotage of the pipeline. And clearly, the only suspect here would have been Moscow. You're absolutely right. Putin doesn't need to sell gas to Western Europe because the Chinese, among others, are buying it and actually financing Ukraine war effort. So clearly, Russia is the culprit here.
Now, Gordon Chang, always appreciate the insight. And man, you're right. Dangerous times we're living in. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.